And we're kicking it off into NFL Week 10. My name is Ken Wyrock. I am here for the Fantasy Authority, joined by my friend Kai Brewer. He's going to be helping me break down some of the games and answering questions for you guys here today. Hopefully get you some last-minute start-sit advice for your fantasy teams. Kai, how you doing today?
Not so great, Ken. As a Colts fan, this has obviously been one of the worst seasons we can remember. We have just moved our last good defensive back to injured reserve, and we cut Vontae Davis this week. And also our only defensive lineman playing worth a damn, Henry Anderson, has also been moved to injured reserve. So the Colts defense is one to target for the rest of the season, especially with the Steelers' weapons coming today. It's been rough, and the offense has looked terrible. Jacoby Brissett cannot save what has been a terrible offense for most of the season. But for fantasy, I'm excited. Let's go. I got a couple of teams locked to make the playoffs, don't even have to set a lineup, and I can still make the playoffs. And a couple of teams right on that edge, and then a couple of teams looking towards next season. So same old, some ups and some downs, but that's why we love fantasy football. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Absolutely. Yeah, your Colts there aren't looking so good, especially with the news of Luck not playing for the rest of the season, going to Europe, getting some interesting medical advice / procedures over there. We'll see what happens with all that for next season, but I think it's pretty safe to say that he's not coming back. Obviously, he is now on IR. So we are looking forward to a couple of interesting games today. I do like a lot of games on the slate today. We're going to pull those up and talk about some of our favorite matchups this week and who we like. Well, we get hopefully some questions in here on the YouTube channel. So if you are trying to find out who you want to play or sit, if you've got some interesting questions for your lineup here this morning, go ahead, shout them out using on Twitter using hashtag AskTFA, or you can go into the YouTube channel and put it right in the chat. That'll be nice and easy for us to see and answer for you guys. Hopefully get you some answers. So let's take a look at some of the games we have today while we are waiting for those questions to come in. There are a couple that strike me as interesting for fantasy situations. One of the ones that I actually want to watch today is the Steelers and Colts game, oddly enough, with Kai here being our resident Colts fan, although he doesn't sound so happy about it today. But it's interesting with Marcus Bryant coming back into the lineup and Juju Smith-Schuster trying to determine who's the true wide receiver two there in Pittsburgh. We were talking about it a little bit on the TFA pod this week. I still stand by Juju staying as the second guy on that offense. I believe that he is going to continue his role and keep eating up targets because he's been producing way more with what he's got. Martavis does have that big playability, though, that, if he does get 2-3 big catches, he could have an outstanding fantasy week. It's what he's always done in his entire career. So what do you think about that? Do you think that, Ben Roethlisberger's gone through some struggles here this season? Is he done, or can he continue to produce at a higher level and support three receivers? That's the question. Both these guys are behind Antonio Brown. So is there enough work for all of them to continue to produce? Tell me what you think, Kai.
Well, a couple of things. First, I mentioned how banged up and terrible this secondary is. They've literally lost 3 starting players since the season began. So that's obviously terrible for any secondary, but for one of the worst in the league, when you lose 3 starters after that, then it's target that defense whenever you can. Antonio Brown obviously should have a monster day today. But I think when you were talking about with those secondary guys, Martavis and Juju, I think the benching sort of healthy scratch from Martavis 2 weeks ago, I think that was just like a punishment. I don't think that's what they want to do moving forward. I don't think he's he was running with the starters this week in practice. I think Martavis and Juju will be in and out of the lineup kind of together. both see about 2/3 of the snaps like they were doing right before Martavis got benched and Juju had his monster destruction game. And yeah, I think this as far as Roethlisberger, it's been talked about in many a place that the Steelers' schedule is going to be pretty cake going forward. Let's see, they've got the Colts now, but then a Titans defense at home that doesn't scare you, a Green Bay Packers defense at home that does not scare you. At Cincinnati, one of those tough rivalry games, maybe not so much that game, but then Baltimore at home, the Patriots defense at home, which again this season has been one of the worst, and then your fantasy championship at Houston. So I think there's several startable games for Roethlisberger there, definitely for those wide receivers, several startable games. And I think going forward, you kind of have to just see how it plays out with Martavis and Juju. I think weeks like this, you can start all three of them. But I don't expect Martavis and Juju to be startable at the same time in all the weeks, just this week against a terrible, 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 no good, very bad Colts defense.
Absolutely. All right. Those are some good ideas. Well, welcome to the show, Anthony. I see you come in a little bit late. You're going to be tardy. I'll put that down on the attendance sheet. But thanks for joining us here
today. He thought the show was Monday. He was waiting on the Dolphins. So he was like, what? There's games on Sunday? What?
Yeah, my fins aren't on today. So, I was completely lost in the world as to what to do with myself today.
Honestly, when I have a Monday game for the Vikings, it's kind of nice. Because I can just sit back and relax and watch football otherwise on Sundays, throw on that red zone and just kind of enjoy the fantasy side of football and not have to worry about my Vikings winning or losing.
Listen, I've been doing that since like week 6, so
it's very
totally fine.
There you go.
Nice, so not having a game on Sunday.
Like 4-5 or 4-4 or something.
Miami is 4-4, I believe.
Yeah, 4-4, so still in it.
We
like to count them out, but they're still in it in a jumbled AFC.
There are way too many teams that are at like 4-4, 4-5, depending on if they've had their bye week or not, or whatever it is. There's a lot of teams within a couple games. It's the wild card race is going to be nuts going out this season, I think.
Yeah, we're technically still relevant, but I don't feel relevant. Like the team's not playing great. We put up a lot of points and a lot of yards against a bad Oakland defense, but now we play Carolina, who has had struggles of their own, but I'm still not very excited about it.
Yeah, going down the playoff picture here, there is, let's see, there's 4 teams that all have 4 wins in the AFC, and then there's one, so the Cowboys have 5 wins, and they're currently still outside of the wild card, but then there's 5 other teams with 4 wins, so this race is going to be absolutely absurd. Any of those teams are within reach if they have a good schedule going out of this season. So that will be interesting to watch. We do have our first question of the day from Jim, one of our regulars here at the TFA Game Day Show. So Jim is laying down a question in the PPR format. He is trying to cash in on the Zeke suspension, as a lot of people are. So he's looking to play either Alfred Morris, Marlon Mack. Okay, so it's Alfred Morris or Marlon Mack when McKinnon is his other current starting running back. So Alfred Morris or Marlon Mack, what do you guys think on that?
Well, that's a tough one. Morris seems like he has a hell of a good opportunity, but it is against Atlanta. In Atlanta likes to throw the ball. If the Cowboys fall behind early, do they abandon the run? And then he has Rod Smith nipping at his heels, who Smith has looked better in the minimal time that they've both had. Smith has looked more relevant, I would say, as a fantasy running back at least. Definitely put up more big plays, more opportunity to score for him. But Marlon Mack against the Steelers, that Colts offense doesn't do much of anything. If I had to choose between the two of them, I'd probably lean with Morris. Perhaps if you're in a PPR, maybe see if Rod Smith is available. He could be. And I'd rather play him in a PPR than Morris at this point.
Yeah, so Kevin had a little shout out here in the YouTube chat. He says to play Mack because there's going to be no Tyron Smith today on defense, so that could be an interesting factor to see whether or not they can capitalize that. And also, he's not an Alfred Morris fan. I'm not going to say I'm really a fan or not a fan of Alfred Morris. I'm just more concerned about how that entire backfield plays out, period. I don't think I can trust anyone at this point. I really don't like starting people that I don't trust, which I know at this point in the season you deal with injuries and all that. Oh, I'm sorry, Tyron Smith on offensive line. My bad.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. Whatever.
You have it now.
Yeah, I deserve it probably, but I don't really pay attention to most team offensive lines by name. I know whether they're good or not, but I don't know the individual players that well. But anyway, so I don't trust any of those guys this week. I don't want to start any of them. I just want to sit back and watch if I can. So that would be my stance on it. Kai, do you have any thoughts on this combination here, Morris or Mack?
Being a Colts fan.
Listen, it's hard to start a Colt. It really is. Even T.Y. Hilton, it's hard to stick him in your lineup. Just trusting that offense at all is gross to me. But over Alfred Morris, I think that this situation is going to work itself out. And I think even today, Darren McFadden is going to be the back that you want to start there. Alfred Morris does not catch passes. That is not a thing that he does anymore and has done for most of his career. I've seen how Alfred Morris has looked out here in New Mexico. I get a lot of Cowboys games, and Rod Smith has clearly looked better than Alfred Morris. They're going to give him the first crack at the starting job, Morris, that is. But I think quickly it becomes a situation where Morris becomes the third option there, and Rod Smith is kind of the first and a half down hammer with McFadden playing on a lot of passing downs, because I think this team is going to switch its identity very quickly or be forced to. The Cowboys defense has been overachieving for much of the season, and they have tough games coming up. The Eagles twice, the Seahawks, they have tough offenses at least coming up. And they're going to have to keep pace with these teams. The cupcake part of Dallas's schedule is over. And I think this team is going to lean a lot more on Dak Prescott. I think they're going to need to throw the ball and not be able to win the way that they're used to winning. And so that has me lean McFadden. Maybe this week against Atlanta, it's a bit of a mixed bag just because the Falcons have had their own struggles. Oh, Kevin, yes, TMC is going to play today. He's going to be the third down back at worst, and I think he should be owned in every league right now.
We got the peanut gallery out here with Kevin right now.
he's a whole gallery by himself. And yeah, I think once they give Alfred Morris 15 carries and he has 27 yards on those 15 carries, I think they're going to realize that Rod Smith and McFadden is the backfield that they want. So all that being said, I would start Mack this week. I don't like either one of those backs. Obviously, you're starting McKinnon, but I would start Mack this week just because I think this team is going to get blown out of the water, and they're going to pull Frank Gore out of the lineup. Mack did not have a
Kev's just ripping you right now.
But yeah, all these fish emojis. But yeah, I think Mack is going to get some work in garbage time late in this game, and I think that's what you're sticking your hat on if you're starting Mack. But yeah, I would not touch Morris this week.
All right, we had some good ideas there. I just want to say that I am stashing Rod Smith in a couple spots because I do like his chances of taking over, but I'll have to see it before I ever start him. He does have another question, Jim, of course, about his wide receivers. We're supposed to rank these guys, so let's just go top to bottom. You guys can give your reasoning for why you think they belong where they are. So the wide receivers that we are talking about are Julio, Sterling Shepard, Emmanuel Sanders, and Marvin Jones. Those are four pretty decent wide receivers. So let's hear what you guys think. Do you have a particular order that you would like to rank these guys in?
He wants us to rank those guys in order?
Yeah, he just says rank them. He needs two wide receivers. So, Oh, I see. Okay, so this was kind of a bigger question that he said later on. So we just kind of went over the running backs there. So let's leave those alone. But let's say we need three of these four guys. Hopefully that'll give Jim some information that he needs here. So which of these four receivers would you sit out of the group?
I think he's starting all four. And he says he has 2 receivers and 2 flexes. I don't know what the ranking portion's for, but if I had to rank them, I would stick with Julio, then Jones, and Sanders, and Shepard probably.
I would probably lean the same way. I might give the edge to Shepard. He's had a chance to reacclimate after his injury. Emmanuel Sanders now just also getting back from injury as well. Could still be a little bit hobbled. I'm not sure. He seemed to have been practicing fine. But that'll be interesting to see. The top 2 for me are definitely Julio and Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones has been crushing it lately, and Julio is Julio. You will not sit him no matter what, even if you think it's a bad matchup. So, yeah, I'm not Jim, if you could clarify for us what you want for, I think I'll play all 4 and bench one of the running backs. So I see. Okay, so he will be probably starting all of these wide receivers, and then benching. If you're Kevin, Alfred Morris. If you're Kai, he's kind of
Alfred Morris.
Yeah. Alfred Morris. Yeah, Kai.
Alfred Morris. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's bench Alfred Morris. I think that's probably the best call out of this entire group.
As far as for me, I'm gonna go ahead and actually agree with Kevin for once. He put in the chat Julio Jones, then Sterling Shepard, then Marvin Jones, and then Emmanuel Sanders. For me, the Broncos' pass offense, even against a Patriots defense that has been had by wide receivers all year, I think the Brock Osweiler factor conundrum is what leads me to benching Sanders until they get somebody else in there. If you have to start him, I would definitely start Sanders over Alfred Morris. But I think in most situations, you probably have better wide receivers to start. But yeah, I do like Sterling Shepard a lot this week. The 49ers can't cover anyone, and I think he's the only reasonable wide receiving option there besides Evan Ingram, who is a wide receiver. Let's not kid ourselves. So for me, it would be Evan Ingram, then Sterling Shepard, and then any of those other guys are unstartable. So that leads me, a lot of targets leads me to start Sterling Shepard over Marvin Jones. I do like Jones a little bit, but I think either him or Tate could have a monster day against the Browns. The Browns are also terrible. So it's a case of good players against terrible matchups, which players are better, which matchups are more terrible. So I don't know. For me, yeah, you can't sit Julio Jones. I like all those guys, but that's the order I'd put him in.
I mean, he should have a big week if he starts all 4. He's got Emmanuel against the Patriots. He's got Jones against the Browns, and then he's got Sterling against the 49ers. I mean, it's probably going to be a good week for you.
In theory, yeah, those are all good plays.
Yeah.
One thing I should note is that so the Giants are playing the 49ers this week. Is that correct?
Yeah, in San Fran.
So the 49ers have actually been fairly stout against the wide receiver in the last couple weeks. They haven't given up more than 9 receptions since week 6 to the entire wide receiving cores of opposing teams. And that is teams like Dallas, Philadelphia, and Arizona, which, now with Drew Stanton, that's not a big deal. But Dallas and Philadelphia definitely have been big passing teams this year. So that is kind of scary to see. That does back me off of Sterling Shepard just a little bit. So I would probably now relegate him back behind Emmanuel Sanders.
Just to counter that a little bit, Kent, in those 3 games, you have to kind of look at how those games played out as well. The 49ers got blown out by the Cardinals, where Adrian Peterson had 37 carries. They got blown out by the Cowboys. I think Zeke had 27 or about their carries as well. And then they got blown out by the Eagles as well after the first half. So I think a little bit of that is game script, those teams not having to throw to wide receivers to push the envelope at all. So I think that could be part of it. But you're right. They have, in terms of just receiving numbers, it hasn't looked great. But I don't expect the Giants to be able to do this at all. Their defense has looked worse each game of the season that they don't play the Broncos. Each game it gets worse. So I think that has me like Shepard a little bit.
So I don't know if you guys covered injuries at all yet, but I just got a notification that Delaney Walker's playing, so I figure I should shout that out because that's a big deal for me. It might be a big deal for other people listening. So Delaney Walker is active against Cincinnati this week. I did get a question too, Kent, if you don't mind me throwing it in there.
Go for it.
Doug Martin, Frank Gore, or Cooper Kupp at a flex position for a half-point PPR. So it's Martin, Gore, or Kupp.
This was from Bill, wasn't it?
Yeah, from Bill.
Yeah, Bill hits me up sometimes too.
Every single week.
Yeah. So I answered his question. I like Cooper Kupp. I like the Rams passing attack this week. They have a pretty awesome matchup. So I'm looking forward to Goff getting it done through the air. Gore, I think we kind of talked about earlier. I kind of agree with Kai that if things start to go south, then they should just stop giving him carries. I don't think he's within reach of any other major milestones for the rest of the season. I can vet that, but he really doesn't have much of a reason. That's why Mack has been getting increased snap and touches over Gore recently, even though it is a little bit sporadic. So I don't think I trust Gore. If you do put in Gore, you're going to expect about 6 points. That's just like the Gore special, unless there's a touchdown. So I don't really like playing that if I don't have to. Kupp represents to me approximately a similar floor, but he has a much, much higher ceiling. I've been liking him in the red zone this year. He's got a handful of touchdowns. He continues to build that rapport with Jared Goff. Even though, Robert Woods is kind of taken over as the chain-moving wide receiver there. For LA, I do still like Cooper Kupp. He's a talented rookie, and he's been getting some good opportunities. So with Doug Martin, I last week scared me, man, because they tried Peyton Barber out once again, and boy, if you can't trust Doug Martin over Peyton Barber, I don't know how you're going to expect him to get a load of carries this week. It wasn't pretty. It killed some of my matchups. I'm sitting him maybe for now just to see what the Tampa Bay offense does now with Jameis Winston out for a decent amount of time. I'm scared about what this offense is going to be able to do. Ryan Fitzpatrick is definitely a serviceable fill-in quarterback, but one thing that does come with him is the possibility of more interceptions, I would say. Even though Jameis Winston wasn't exactly the most controlled QB on the planet, I'd say Fitz represents a higher turnover possibility, meaning that they're going to be playing from behind, even though they are playing against the Jets. So I don't really like Martin this week. He's been kind of iffy this year unless he gets a touchdown similar to Gore. I don't think he's capped 100 yards in combination yet. Maybe he has once, but it hasn't been that pretty. People kind of expected him to be a stash for those first suspended weeks, and he'll come out flying, but he really has only been puttering a little bit. So I go Kupp, especially because it is 0.5 PPR. Tell me what you guys think.
Yeah, I think it's Kupp pretty easily. If you want a slice of this Rams offense, that's not a bad one to take. Anytime you have a good offense like the Rams playing against a really bad defense like the Texans, and yes, they are a really bad defense at this point, then you take it where you can get it. I think Kupp is in an okay spot to get a touchdown, and he's seen a pretty safe floor of between 3 and 5 catches the last few weeks and most of the season. But if you want guaranteed rock solid 4 to 6 points, Frank Gore is your man. But that's not how you win your week. Doug Martin definitely scares me in terms of just he's losing snaps to Peyton Barber of all people. And he's also in a bad situation, like you said, with Ryan Fitzpatrick. It is the Ryan Fitzpatrick revenge game, but it's also the Josh McCown revenge game. So let's be real about these revenge games with journeyman quarterbacks. They're everywhere and often, and they don't mean much of anything. But Frank Gore, one game this year with less than 40 yards, and it was 34 yards. One game with more than 60 yards, and it was only 84. So Frank Gore is going to get you 4, 5, or 6 points. In PPR, that goes to 5, 6, or 7 points. And that's it. That's all he's going to do. If he falls into the end zone, great. Against the Steelers, probably won't fall into the end zone. So, I can't trust Frank Gore in any capacity. But like I said, if you want 4, 5, or 6 points, if that's what you're looking for, then he's rock solid going to get you that.
Yeah, all right. Anthony, go for it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I would just tend to agree. I don't really have much more to add. I think you guys pretty much nailed it. Martin and Gore are probably higher floors, but the ceiling is about touching the floor at this point. So just go with Kupp. Go with the upside. See what you can get out of him.
Yep, absolutely. Good idea there. All right, so we do have one more question from Jim. It's talk about Kelvin Benjamin. He's over on the Bills now. He got traded earlier this season. He's active this week for the first time, and we're wondering if he's going to be able to do anything with this Buffalo Bills offense. They will also have Charles Clay back, if I'm not mistaken, this week. So it will be interesting to see that offense kind of expand a little bit from the last couple of weeks. Tyrod Taylor obviously stands to benefit from those two guys coming into the lineup. I do have him started in a couple of spots, so Tyrod Taylor is definitely a startup quarterback and will be probably for the rest of the season. But Kelvin Benjamin himself might draw a little bit of a question mark this week. I don't really see him being a significant factor, especially because he is likely to line up against the Saints rookie cornerback Marshon Lattimore, who has been very good this year, and the Saints defense is actually improving quite a bit with a lot of young talent. So I don't particularly like playing Kelvin Benjamin. Obviously, he should stay on the bench until you know what his role is there in Buffalo. But it's going to be interesting to watch. He could have some, down the road kind of value. I don't see it being a lot. It might be a flex play at best. If there's another good matchup coming up, I'll have to pull up their schedule. But I don't know. What do you guys think about Kelvin Benjamin in Buffalo and that offense as a whole now that they've got a little bit of a different image going on here?
I like him. And I know New Orleans hasn't been letting up a lot of points. They're 11th best against the wide receiver this year in fantasy. So not a great matchup. But I am starting him in a league. I want to see what he can do. I think Tyrod Taylor is good enough that he can get his playmakers the ball. And now we saw that last week. I mean, Sammy Watkins comes in. It's his first game with Buffalo, Thursday Night Football. He's sitting on the sideline watching Zay Jones and Deontay Thompson just tear it up. And it's like, who the hell is Zay Jones and Deontay Thompson, right? I mean, now you get yourself a Kelvin Benjamin who, for better or for worse, has had some success in this league. And I think he'll be fine. I think he'll do some good things there. I mean, for a quarterback who's not afraid to throw the ball up, that is what Kelvin Benjamin needs. Like if he were in a situation with, somebody who was a little more tentative with the ball, like if he ended up with a Miami or even a Cleveland right now with Kaiser or something like that, I'd be a little more concerned because I don't think they're going to give him the chances. But I think Tyrod in Buffalo will give him the chances he needs to go up, get the ball, and do something with it.
Yeah, I think I agree that the rest of season outlook for the Bills wide receivers looks great, especially Kelvin Benjamin. Next week they have the Chargers, so that's kind of middle of the road. But then after that, Kansas City Chiefs secondary, the Patriots, the Colts, who I've talked about ad nauseum, the Dolphins, it's again. So that schedule, as far as for wide receivers, looks very good. And that's where they're lining Kelvin Benjamin up, even though he's a tight end. They're lining him up at wide receiver, and you can start him in your fantasy leagues as a wide receiver. So as long as you're doing that, I think he's a good play in all those weeks. This week, I would not start him in any kind of capacity. I do believe he's going to see Marshon Lattimore this week. And Marshon Lattimore, let's see, last week all he did was, I don't know, hold Mike Evans to 1 catch for 6 yards and then forced him to get suspended for this week. So Marshawn Lattimore good. He good. So and all season long he's been doing this. It's not just a 1-week thing. Marshawn Lattimore is fantastic. They stole him at 11th overall in the draft this year. So I would hold on to Kelvin Benjamin for sure, but this is the last bad matchup he'll have the rest of the season. So, and Charles Clay coming back is just an uptick for that whole offense. Zay Jones has been dealing with an injury, and he's out today. So, again, I don't think there's any question who Marshawn Lattimore is covering. But he could be coming back. But if he's out, maybe that's an uptick for this offense, the way he's been catching the ball as far as Zay Jones, or not catching the ball, should I say. So, I don't know. I like Tyrod Taylor a lot. I like the way this offense has been playing. I like their schedule moving forward. I like everything about them, except this week against the Saints defense, which has been terrific, especially against number 1 wide receivers.
All right, boys, those are some good ideas there. I like hearing about all that stuff about defenses, especially when one like New Orleans, who has been kind of, for the past couple of seasons been touted as a bad defense and wanting to start people against it, definitely have turned it around and become more stout. So it's really fun to see NFL teams turn stuff like that around. Kai, hopefully your Colts can do something like that in the future seasons to come. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about maybe let's go with like a risky flex style question. So I want you guys to take a couple minutes. I'll burn some time here while you think of a risky flex guy who could be a potential week winner for you, maybe someone you can grab off waivers, maybe not. Whatever you guys want to kind of turn this question into is fine with me. So go ahead and think of a guy. I'm going to pull one up here real quick. I think I'm ready to start Juju Smith-Schuster. I know we talked about it a little bit earlier. A lot of people are ready to just throw Martavis Bryant back in that role right away. I liked what Juju was doing even before Bryant got, team suspended there for a week for that social media stint or whatever. So I do like Juju's role in that offense. I think he's capable of trouncing the Colts today. And now that they've shut down Vontae Davis, there's some cornerback issues going on there. So, Antonio Brown's going to draw the best cornerback, which I don't even know who it is anymore. I don't know anyone beyond Vontae Davis there. So, it should be a good look for the trickle-down effect of wide receivers there. I like Juju. I'm going to probably start him in a couple leagues here, standard and PPR. I think he's got potential. So let's go ahead and hear. Maybe you guys have come up with someone. If you got one ready, go ahead and just take over and shout out and tell me why you're feeling your risky flex play this week.
Well, real quick on that, Camp, before we go forward, just so everyone knows, the Colts starting cornerback duo this week is Rashawn Melvin and Pierre Desir. So if you've ever heard of those players, then good on you. But I've been forced to watch quite a bit of them, and they're not good. So I can't say it enough that every week going forward, even if it's a bad offense, even if it's a bad quarterback, please try to start some players against the Colts. But as far as a risky flex play for me this week, I think that would have to be Adam Humphries. We talked a little bit about this game this week, but with Mike Evans out in the Ryan Fitzpatrick revenge game, I do think that they can have some success against the Jets team that I think they'll be behind for a lot of the game. Like Kent said, Ryan Fitzpatrick is prone to turnovers. This team is prone to being bad at football. So I think Adam Humphries could be a real good sneaky play this week with Deshaun Jackson getting, I guess, the most attention of those wide receiver targets. Cameron Brate could be in a good spot too against the Jets. They've been giving up a lot of points to tight ends recently, including several touchdowns. So, I got to go. Adam Humphries is one of my guys this week. And shout-outs to Jim in the chat. You guys won't be able to see this after it's a video, but Jim's hilarious, including comments like, the modern shutdown shutdown corner gets wide receivers suspended in terms of Jalen Ramsey getting AJ Green ejected and Marshawn Lattimore getting Mike Evans suspended. So that's obviously hilarious.
He also says Orleans Darkwa for a risky flex because he has 2 first names.
Listen, I don't know many people named Darkwa, but
no, he's talking about
I don't think
Colts
that's a
corner.
risky flex.
That was about the Colts corner with 2 first.
Oh, is that what it was? I can't read apparently.
Rashawn Melvin. Yeah, Rashawn Melvin. But yeah, I think Orleans Darkwa is not a risky flex play this week. I think he's an RB2. Just in terms of the Giants' weird commitment to running the football over the last few weeks, and then, of course, the 49ers being not good. Ezekiel Elliott is obviously Ezekiel Elliott, but he destroyed the 49ers. LeGarrette Blount looked good against the 49ers, and Adrian Peterson had 37 carries and over 150 yards. So I don't think Dark was on par with any of those running backs, really, in terms of running the ball. But I do think he can have a good game against the Niners. This is one of those teams. Unfortunately, the Colts haven't quite got there yet, but the Niners are one of those teams that have just given up. They're done with the season. The front office, the players, the coaches, they don't really care about winning anymore, which is smart and which is a point that I wish the Colts would have gotten to, half the season ago. But I'm talking too much about how bad the Colts are. I'm sorry, guys. Listen, after the end of this season, my contract is going to be up. So if there's any team out there that would rather have me as a fan, I'm a restricted free agent. So you might have to offer a little something. Maybe not a draft pick, but something. To get me to swing over there. I've been looking at the Texans.
Gosh, in division, that's horrible. But by the way,
you go where the money is. You go where the money is.
I think San Fran can win that game today.
Against, I think either one of those teams could win.
Yeah.
They have a collective 1 win between them against a Broncos team that we now know is bad. So I wouldn't be surprised if either one of those teams won.
So San Francisco doesn't look great by any means. I don't think they've given up. I mean, they have traded away a starting corner. That's a bit worrisome. And they're starting CJ Beathard instead of just throwing Garoppolo in there. I mean, really, could he be worse than Beathard's been playing?
He'll start after the bye.
It's not CJ's fault, right? Because CJ's a 3rd-round pick rookie, did not expect to play at all this week.
Well, and they thought and many people, myself included, thought he was a reach when they took him. Taking a day 3 player in the 3rd round. But anyway.
Yeah, I guess we shouldn't really make excuses. Maybe he's just not very good because there's been plenty of 3rd-round picks that are playing right now who played in their rookie year. So
Russell Wilson.
Yeah, Beathard's been pretty rough. I don't see them throwing Jimmy in right away because after all, they are 0-0. So it's not like you really are rushing to try and get to a playoff spot or anything. So take your time. Make sure he knows the playbook. Ease him in. Make sure he's going to be the QB of the future. You don't want to put him in a bad spot right away. So after the bye sounds good for Jimmy G. On me as well. Anthony, did you have a guy in mind? Otherwise, we can jump into one more question from Jim.
So I have a couple, and I don't know that they're should be considered risky flex plays, but I think Robert Woods is a really good one. Dude's only owned 69%. He's only started 55%. But if you look at the past 4 weeks, especially in PPR, he has not scored less than 10 points. And the other one, similarly, is Marquise Lee. And it's kind of the same story, not widely owned, not widely started, but has 3 straight games of 10 or more points. So those are 2 guys on my list of probably guys who are getting a lot of questions around the fantasy universe this week as to whether or not they should start them. So I would consider them risky flex plays that have actually been doing pretty well the past couple weeks.
Yeah, Marquise Lee was on the injury report, but he was declared active for the game today. So if he's active, I would go ahead and throw him out there, especially in PPR leagues. So like that choice a lot. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into this other question that Jim. Oh, did you have something else?
I'm sorry, one sec. Jordan Reed was just ruled out. So
yeah. Oh, yeah. Jordan Reed is out. I have Vernon Davis in one of my leagues. He's a great play when Jordan Reed does not play. Even against the Vikings defense, we're only, I think, 15th in the league right now against tight ends. It's not like we're crazy shutting down tight ends. We're a good overall defense, but you're going to be able to get fantasy points on the outside with tight ends. So I'm not too scared about starting Vernon Davis against the Vikings this week.
Yeah, don't mind me while I scramble to find a tight end. Thanks.
Yeah, I know. I had that problem last week with Ertz when he was, tested his hamstring before the game or groin or whatever it was right before the game. He got ruled out. So that was kind of scary for me, but I managed to do okay. All right. Well, we do have another question here. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. Oh, wait, maybe he was just kind of responding to what we were saying. I thought he had a question about running backs here.
Yeah, so he has okay. Well, him, he has two better running backs than Darkwa, and but yeah, I mean most people probably don't, but yeah, that's a good situation. Alvin Kamara is a high-end RB2 at this point, which is crazy. But the Saints have completely flipped their identity to a run-first team, and it goes hand in hand with how well the defense has been playing. Mark Ingram is a back-end RB1, and Kamara is a high-end RB2, and that's what it's going to look like moving forward. I mean, they face a tougher defense in the Bills this week, but the Jets kind of pounded them with the run on a short week on Thursday last week. So I think they could both have a good day today and the rest of the season going forward. This offense, those guys, Ingram and Kamara, are what makes this offense go at this point, not Drew Brees. They're kind of limiting him. It was weird. I want to double-check this just because I don't want to be wrong. But Drew Brees, who has been his perennial fantasy stud, been a top 5 QB, I think, for 5 years in a row, 6 years in a row, something ridiculous like that. Let me just see. This is what happens when you're not prepared to look up Drew Brees stats. Lesson to everyone: always be prepared to look up Drew Brees stats.
Yeah, well, okay. Go ahead.
So, despite he is the QB the 9, I think, on the season, but he has not had a single game of more than 22.2 fantasy points, and that was against the Patriots. When they were behind for most of that game. He has not had a game since week 3. So he's Drew Brees and Alex Smith have like switched souls or switched bodies or something, or switched teams. I'm not sure. The Chiefs are the one with a terrible defense that puts their quarterback in passing situations, having an out-of-his-mind season. And then the Saints are the one with a tough defense leaning on the run game in which Drew Brees doesn't have to do much. So those teams have kind of switched identities over the course of the last 10 weeks or so. So it's weird, but that's what's happening. And adjust accordingly.
I actually have a theory on this, and this is the same exact theory that I used for the Jacksonville Jaguars the year after Blake Bortles had an outstanding fantasy season. In 2015, they then went out and started getting a lot of defensive pieces through free agency and through the draft. You can now see the results of that, and Jacksonville is one of the better defenses in the league. They started building with a lot of good pieces, and Blake Bortles then also regressed in terms of ability, but he was asked to throw way, way, way less, and now they have a running game. And this is exactly what's happening in New Orleans right now. Not to say that Drew Brees is anything like Blake Bortles. Obviously, Drew Brees is a Hall of Famer, and we all know that. But they have a better defense. They have a running game. They don't need to throw as often because they're not behind as often. They have a good record right now, and they're going to continue to play and win games, and that's going to mean more running. They're not going to be in catch-up mode as often as they have been over the past couple seasons. Drew Brees is able to get it done when asked, and he still is solid on his opportunities. He has some outstanding QB ratings over the games this year, and he still has a good completion percentage. It's not like he's playing bad by any means. He just does not have the volume that he's used to, and that has kind of caused his drop-off from his perennial top 5 quarterback rating down to 9 or 10 or whatever he's at now. So it's not because of him. It's because of the system around him, and that's why you got to be aware of this kind of stuff. So keep an eye on teams if they start building up a defense, building up a run game, drafting, high-end running backs and stuff like that. You're going to, not expect that quarterback to continue producing on volume like he has for so long. So that's why I think he is the way he is, and it might be that way now until he's retired if he stays with the Saints. So it's something to keep an eye on. Maybe his value drops a little bit, from here on out.
Yep, and just to add one more thing to that, I did in some research in an article this summer for TFA that was about Blake Bortles and his garbage time production, and I took a look at all points that a quarterback accrued in the fourth quarter when their team was behind by 2 possessions or more, so 9 points or more, basically garbage time. And Blake Bortles obviously was far and away the number one benefactor of that sort of scenario. Ridiculous. I think like a third of his points in total for the season were in garbage time. But finishing second in that category was Drew Brees, believe it or not. He had the second most as far as percentage of his points in garbage time. It was Drew Brees, and a lot of it was this Saints defense putting him in bad spots where he had to come back. So I think you're right. I think that's something for myself and maybe for some other folks to look into this offseason as everything wraps up is a bad defense that might have some young players that are looking to improve and seeing that quarterback's production decline in response. So good stuff there, Ken. Good stuff.
Anthony, I think you're talking, but you're muted right now.
Sorry about that. I did get a question. You're right. I was muted. From Matt McGregor on Twitter. He says, should I drop Aaron Jones or Dion Lewis for Orleans Darkwa?
Probably neither. Honestly, I think I still like Jones, even though he had kind of a rough week last week. I think he's got some value there. They said that Ty Montgomery's a starting starting running back. He's not a quarterback, but I think that Aaron Jones showed that he can get it done on the ground, and Brett Hundley is a bad NFL quarterback, and so they're not going to have a good passing attack anymore. They need to rely on the run game if they're going to win games, and if they're going to win games, then they're going to run more. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy if they can continue to feed the ball on the ground and let this guy produce like he has been. Dion Lewis, he's out this week, according to Jim. I actually was not aware of that. But he's been the lead back, which is a very loose term for New England so far in the last couple weeks. But it looks like I don't see anything about Dion Lewis being out. So I'm going to continue to talk as though he's playing. But he's been getting fed the ball, and the Patriots like him a lot. Obviously, they've had their moments where they use him quite frequently. He's definitely a red zone guy for them. It's hard to trust a running back in New England, but it's definitely Dion Lewis out of any of those guys if you have the opportunity. And Orleans Darkwa, I don't really like every single week. I would only play him in really, really positive matchups because, frankly, he's an okay running back. He's probably not like a pro caliber or all pro caliber running back. So it's only going to be these smash style matchups that you actually enjoy starting him. And if you're going to just have him take up your bench for, week in, week out beyond the good ones, then I don't know if I ever would play him. Dion Lewis represents a much more stable production. And then Aaron Jones, I know last week was really rough, but I think stick it out and you're going to expect to see 10 to 12 carries from him with a couple of receptions every week. I kind of took a look at him in my running back trends article. So I still think that Aaron Jones is going to be fine for the rest of the season. He'll be a decent flex play. I just don't see the Giants being good enough to produce with their running backs every week. So I don't know. That's kind of my opinion. I would not drop either for him unless you really, really need like a high upside play. And the Giants are in the afternoon today, so I suppose you might be able to wait and C, since the Patriots also play tonight, but I wouldn't drop either for him. I don't know. What are you guys feeling?
I agree. And isn't it funny how the Patriots backfield came into the league? They got Mike Gillislee, they got Rex Burkhead. It was the talk of the town. It was the talk of the fantasy universe. Burkhead, he's going to kill it. And then they get Gillislee. Oh, my God, Gillislee, he's going to be the best running back ever. And who do they go back to? Dion Lewis and James White, because those are the two highest producing Patriots running backs this year. James White in a PPR has actually been rather incredible, quietly incredible. And Dion Lewis has been, he's been Dion Lewis, a guy that you don't want to trust week to week, but he has been pretty good. And then Aaron Jones, I agree with you. Don't freak out. All right, Aaron Jones this season has looked like the better back between him and Montgomery. It's a tough situation, but Orleans Darkwa has been in New York for 4 years, guys. If he was the go-to running back, he probably would be the go-to running back already. He's had 2 good games this year, and they were in the past 3 weeks, so it makes him look like a really solid play. And he may have good games, but I don't think he's anybody that you can consistently play. And I really don't even think he's somebody that you could play matchup based with, because you just don't know how many touches he's going to get. He's a guy that very rarely gets touches. This year, those 2 games where he performed well were the only 2 games where he had more than 10 touches. So that's all I got.
All right, yeah. I was waiting to see if Kai was willing to jump in there.
I do want to jump in there and go ahead and back Orleans Darkwa a little bit. Anthony said that Darkwa hadn't had more than 10 touches outside of those 2 games, and that's because the one in between he had 9. So, I mean, I'm not – and that was in a Seahawks game that kind of got away from them. And I do think that – some games will get away from the Giants.
I should say that's rushes, not touches. I'm sorry, I misspoke, because he did have 12 touches.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I misspoke as well. Yeah, he had 9 rushes in that game. But and I think that was a little bit of game script. But I'm not saying Dark was an every week start, but I do think he can be matchup based. He can be played. They have games coming up against teams like the Cowboys, the Falcons. Let's see. Well, since they wouldn't play the Falcons. Sorry. Against the Chiefs, the Redskins, the Raiders, and the Cowboys coming up. So I like most of those matchups. And this week, I think he is a solid matchup. If you need someone this week, I think definitely pick up Darkwa. But I would rather own Darkwa over both of those other guys. I think Dion Lewis, yes, he's looked like the best Patriots back so far, and he's been getting the most carries. But Rex Burkhead has been back for 2 weeks now. People kind of forgot as they went on the bye. But 7 total touches for Rex Burkhead the week he came back. The week after that, 11 total touches. So he's getting more involved in this offense. I don't think he's going to dominate, but I do think his return impacts the value of Dion Lewis. And I think they have learned their lesson in terms of playing Dion Lewis too much and him getting hurt. And I think they're being conservative with him. They know how valuable he is to this team and the kind of weapon that he is. And I think they feel that way about most of their running backs. And that's why they're splitting it up so evenly. I think White is going to continue to see the most work in the passing game. Lewis is going to continue to see the most work in the running game. But I don't think any of those guys are confidently startable even in any matchups, because what is a good matchup for the Patriots? They change what they do so often that I'm not sure what they want to do. And with Chris Hogan still being out and Danny Amendola was limited in practice this week as well, they've had talks about moving Burkhead out to wide receiver as well, so he could get more work there also. So I think Dion Lewis is far from a startable player until maybe some of these running backs go down or something. So that would be the guy that I would drop. I do view Aaron Jones and Orleans Darkwa as basically the same player at this point. They're both not in a good situation. Their quarterbacks have not been playing well. I think Eli Manning has been playing better than Hundley. I don't know that that's arguable, but they haven't been playing well at all. The defense has been playing poorly. So they're kind of in the same sort of game script situation, but I think Jones is a little bit worse than Dark was. Jones might have a little bit more talent, but yes, Dark was been in the league for a while, but he's never had this backfield kind of, I don't want to say to himself, but Paul Perkins was finally healthy and active last week and didn't get a single touch. So I think
that's because Paul Perkins is
lowest
level of NFL talent.
He's at least past Paul Perkins, and Paul Perkins won't be coming back to steal 4 or 5 touches a week or anything like that. So I think as far as Darkwa, I think he's had to deal with other backs in this backfield for a while. I think he still has Wayne Gallman breathing down his neck, so I think the margin of error is slim for him. But I don't think he's that much different from Aaron Jones, and I think he's a little bit better than Aaron Jones in terms of fantasy from this point forward.
That's a fair take. It's good to have a little bit of debate on either side. So take that information, use it as you will. Try and make the best choices for your team. We did have a little
wrong take, but it's
a wrong take.
We will see, Anthony. We will see.
So we did have a fun little conversation because Jim mentioned that he thought that Dion Lewis was out. He actually instead was referring to Dion Sims, the tight end for the Chicago Bears, which now led us to pointing out that the starting tight end is likely rookie Adam Shaheen, which I don't know how much you guys know about him, but I do a little bit of draft prep every year, and I did like this guy coming out of college. He's a great athletic pass-catching tight end. I don't know how well he's going to be at blocking. I know that was one of his weaknesses, but he could represent an interesting target there in Chicago for Trubisky. He's a nice big body. I believe he's 6'6". He's a big guy. Obviously, he's a tight end, but it could be an interesting snag if you have a deep roster, if you're playing Dynasty. It's always interesting because rookie tight ends typically don't produce. This has been kind of a weird year for that with guys like Evan Ingram. Even O.J. Howard has had some good weeks, and a couple other guys have been doing pretty well. David Njoku's had a couple of good weeks. So it's something you usually wait on for tight ends to produce in the NFL. But if Adam Shaheen is being thrusted into a starting role here, that could, produce some interesting results. And I don't know, do you guys have any feelings about that? Or it'd be pretty risky, absolutely. But deep leagues, Dynasty, might be a possible guy.
I do. I think in a 16-team league, if you're struggling at tight end, he might be worth an ad just to see what happens. But to be fair, the guy's been behind Dion Sims, behind Zach Miller all season long. So the team obviously didn't think he was ready. I loved Adam Shaheen coming out of college. He is a small school version of Gronk, and I don't think that's an unfair comparison. But that being said, he has Mitch Trubisky throwing him the ball, and with the amount of times they're letting him throw, that might be 2 targets per game. To the tight end position, and they still have Ben Broniker there, who they like a little bit. He's been kicking around practice squad to active roster the last year and a half or so. So I don't know that this is like his tight end job to lose. But like you said, in deep dynasty or just regular dynasty 20-man roster kind of thing, if tight end is a position that you need some help, I think he's worth a speculative ad because he is so young, because his ceiling is so high with the measurables, like you said, Kent. So I definitely like Adam Shaheen, but I think if you're expecting him to produce like these other rookie tight ends, I think that might be a little far-fetched. But I don't know. I like him enough to add and put on your bench. I don't think he's startable the rest of this season, and definitely not this week. But I don't know. It's worth adding to see what happens, like you said.
All right, interesting take there. I like it. Anthony, you have something to add on there?
Hey, it could be a sneaky good play this week. Yeah, Mitchell Trubisky and him probably had a connection while Trubisky was backing up Glennon. I mean, there's something to be said for that. We've seen quarterbacks come in.
Well, that was with Dion Sims, the second string time.
Shaheen was probably in there, I'm sure. I don't know. We've seen guys come in before and actually have teams put in the guys that they had been practicing with to get them more involved. Now, it's Chicago's offense. They're not great. It would be a really risky play. But, I mean, if you're looking for some high upside risk play, maybe in a DFS scenario, hey, go for it. I'm no DFS expert though, so don't take that advice from me too seriously.
Yeah, maybe if you're playing some of the quarter daily tournaments, you could maybe take a look at doing a Shaheen guy there for a cheap tight end position. I don't know if I'd suggest it, but quarter, why not? Take a roll.
Watch it. He'll
see
score,
what you got.
He'll score 4 touchdowns today. Watch.
Oh man, that would be DFS winner material right there. Honestly,
it always happens.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, we did have a little bit of clarification on this Orleans Darkwa situation from Matt on Twitter. Or Matthew on Twitter. So this is a little bit different of a circumstance. He might be trying to get Darkwa and play him. So he's asking now if he should drop Keenan Allen or Devontae Adams start him over Drake. And this is a definite no from me. Keenan Allen's still going to have better days ahead, even though he's been kind of middle of the road. And Devontae Adams, I don't know. I might lean towards it. I don't know if I'd do it, but I'd have to take a look at how he's been with Brett Hundley there. So I did mention earlier that I don't like the passing attack so much in Green Bay right now. So I don't think I'd drop Devontae Adams. You could probably still trade him if you are not past your trade deadline. People will take him on the name value that he has accrued from last season, and he's been pretty well in the beginning of this year too. So I'd try and trade him if you could, but I realize we're 15 minutes before game time here this week, and you want to get Darkwa, so that might not be a scenario you can go with. But
and trade deadline ended yesterday for most Yahoo leagues. So
yeah, most leagues that's passed, but some are a little later. Yeah,
I tried to trade so many times and I got nothing done, man.
Yeah, this would probably be a no from me though. Honestly,
I agree.
Yeah, well, in the Hundley, the Brett Hundley era, Devontae Adams has been, and I don't think it's very close. I'm looking right now, but yeah, it hasn't been very close. And in the game and a half, I guess that Hundley has played, or is it 2.5 games now? They played the Lions, and then the Lions, the Saints, and then
Aaron Rodgers got injured against the Vikings.
Right. Okay. So in the 2.5 games Hundley has played, Devontae Adams has been by far the best fantasy option there in terms of wide receiver, better than Jordy Nelson or Randall Cobb. He had 7 for 53 last week against the Lions in a game script that had them behind most of the game. I think most of the games are going to go that way. He seems to have the best connection with Hundley. He does have a touchdown with Hundley. So I'm not optimistic about any of the Packers wide receivers, but that is the most optimistic I am about them. I don't think I'm dropping Keenan Allen. I still think he's a wide receiver too, and better days are ahead. They've had a couple of rough matchups, including this week against Jacksonville. But I think, better days are ahead for Keenan Allen, so I definitely wouldn't drop him. If you want to try to move Devontae Adams, then that's fine. Like we said, if the trade deadline hasn't passed, if you still have the opportunity to trade Devontae Adams, I think you can, because there are optimistic people about him still. But for me, I definitely wouldn't drop either one of those guys. If you can move Adams, I think he's one of those guys that you can sell low on, because I think it's just going to get worse. I think Brett Hundley's not even the best quarterback left on the active roster. I think they should give Joe Callahan a look-see. That might be a hot take, but that's my opinion. From what I've seen of both of them in the preseason, Callahan has looked better than both of them. Better than Hundley. So I don't know. What do you think, Anthony, moving forward with Adams and this Packers team, like in general?
It's a tough situation. I'm a Randall Cobb owner, so I'm in a similar boat here. But you were right.
I definitely dropped Randall Cobb everywhere that I have Randall Cobb.
You're right in the fact that you're right in the fact that Devontae Adams has been a favorite of Hundley's. I mean, just watching that game the other day, you could definitely see. I'm sitting here screaming, "Throw it to Cobb! Throw it to Cobb!" He's throwing it to Adams. I mean, it's the Adams show there with Hundley, and so I don't think he's droppable. And Keenan Allen, I don't think so either. So Packers situation's rough. I would like to see Hundley do something. The offensive line has given him no time. Just watching highlights, actually, right now, they're showing Brett Hundley He doesn't throw the ball very well, especially on the move, which is surprising because he's a very athletic quarterback. And the offensive line gives him about a half a second before he has to break out of the pocket. So it's just a bad situation all around for Green Bay. If you could have moved your receivers during the trade period, I would have done that. Now it's hard to drop them. It's hard to drop them. Unless somebody really starts to blow up on a consistent basis and you have an opportunity to get them, I don't think I would drop them at this point.
Yeah, and like you mentioned with the offensive line there, Anthony, the right and left tackle spots have been revolving doors all season long. Even when Rodgers was in there, Bakhtiari's been in and out of the lineup. Bulaga was finally put on injured reserve this week, I think, for people that were waiting to see on that. And, earlier in the season, their swing tackle, Jason Spriggs, who had been playing well, went on injured reserve as well. So, this offensive line definitely is having trouble in passing situations for sure.
And I do think that Green Bay their receivers will do better as the season goes on. I think as Brett Hundley gets more comfortable, I think as the offensive line learns his maneuvers, I can't think of a better word right now, but in offensive line, if they're used to playing with a single guy for so long, they know which direction he's going to go when he tries to scramble. They know, he's going to try to go between the guard and the tackle, which is normally what they do. But Hundley, it seems, tries to go around. So they'll start to adapt to that. And I think, the receivers end up doing better. I myself am starting Kenyon Drake over Randall Cobb this week. I don't feel great about it, but Cobb, he had a good week last week, and I started him last week, so I felt good about that. But it's a hard pill to swallow when guys you expected to have big seasons out of just don't look like they're going to do it this year.
Well, what do you think about that game? That's not one we've touched on a lot so far. The Monday Nighter, some people are having to make decisions about those players today, with it being Monday night. And your Dolphins, Anthony, they're going up against Carolina. Kenyon Drake and Damian Williams, I think, were both top 20 plays last week, if I remember correctly. We obviously don't expect them to be able to play the Raiders defense every week. But who do you like going forward? I know Damian Williams has been sick this week and has missed some practice. But it's looking like he could go either way in terms of playing. But Kenyon Drake definitely looked a little bit better and was a little bit more involved than Williams, though they both split time. And then Devontae Parker back. What does that do to Kenny Stills? And then Jarvis Landry has been a lock all season, despite the in and out, up and down, terrible, good quarterback play they've had. Jarvis Landry has still been pretty consistent in terms of fantasy and being so heavily involved in that offense. And then on the other side is still all alone. He had a pretty good game last week, but he is probably going to see some Xavier Howard this week. So that's not great. He's been playing all right in terms of that Miami secondary. So what do you think about these Dolphins and guys like Funchess and McCaffrey in terms of tomorrow night, Anthony?
Well, I think Kenyon Drake and Damian Williams are going to continue to split carries the entire season. It's not going to change. They're not going to decide on one or the other. I think Kenyon Drake is a slightly better running back than Williams, but Williams does have the big playability. He does have that ability to get out in the flat, make somebody miss, and pop off a 50-yard touchdown or whatever, because we've seen it from him. We've seen it from him as the change of pace back for Jay Ajayi now for 2 years. So Jarvis Landry is a PPR running back at this point. He gets flat catches, 2-yard slants, things like that you see Duke Johnson get in Cleveland. You'll see Theo Riddick in previous seasons get in Detroit. So I think Jarvis Landry is you can't sit him. You hit the nail on the head with Kenny Stills. His value gets lost with Devontae Parker being back. Cutler definitely likes Parker better and trusts Parker better. Stills was a byproduct of Moore being in there. I think Moore prefers Stills. Cutler prefers Parker. So that's the way it goes for that. On the flip side, Curtis Samuel or Russell Shepard, whoever's lined up against Tankersley. I think Tankersley is going to be a fine corner in this league, but he has struggled so far this season against the deep ball. Curtis Samuel is the speed guy there for Carolina. So I think Curtis Samuel is a sneaky good play against Miami on Monday night. I think Funchess will be fine too. Xavier Howard is turning into a good corner, but he's only in his second year. He's still prone to mistakes. And, Rashad Jones isn't a very good cover safety. They get TJ McDonald back this week. That's important to note. TJ McDonald is not a very good cover safety either, but he is a thumper in the middle there. So I think the running game is going to be hurting for Carolina, as if it was doing well in the first place. But
well, look who's joined us last minute. Kevin Steele himself.
With 7 minutes to lock.
Yeah.
7 minutes of gold hot takes. Here it is.
Hey, well, he's getting set up. I got one quick question for you guys. My team, PPR, should I start Devontae Parker or DeMarco Murray?
Is DeMarco playing?
The Titans are playing against Cincinnati this week.
I'm going DeMarco. I don't know. I like going with the running back. I feel like they get more consistent touches.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Henry out-carries him again in terms of DeMarco Murray, but I would play Murray over Parker there. It's just hard to trust the Miami Dolphins offense beyond Jarvis Landry. And the running game is what looked good last week. Granted, it was against the Raiders, who haven't been able to stop really anyone on the ground. So I don't know. For me, it would be it would for me it would be DeMarco Murray.
Yeah, Miami's running game is mostly screens anyways. That's what you get with a creative offensive coordinator like Gase. So.
I had Murray in, but I just wanted to get a feel from you guys, see what you were thinking. So, yeah, I'm going to lock it in, Murray.
I think it's a lot closer than it would have been, 5 weeks ago.
Yeah, I agree.
Man, I just looking at Devontae Parker in PPR, in games where he's actually played the entire time, so he got injured week 5 and only had a catch that week. But the other weeks where he's actually played, he's had 8 or more targets, 4 or more receptions, and 69 or more yards every single time. So, and I know he's getting a lot of garbage time production, but honestly, that doesn't bother me too much on a team that's likely going to be in garbage time quite a bit. So, I don't know. Hey, as long as Jay Cuddy keeps slinging them, I'm going to start Devontae Parker. So I don't know. It was close for me. I kind of switched back and forth a couple times this week, so it's a toss up for me. Murray's been a little bit puttery himself, so I don't know. I thought it was kind of an interesting one. Kevin, how you doing, bud?
Fantastic. Just got done building about 75 lineups and just got them done.
That's so many lineups.
That is quite a bit.
Scared money don't make money.
Sure. So what do you think of this Parker and Murray situation?
It's definitely Parker. DeMarco Murray is a little banged up and don't really know how his usage is going to be. Game script could take him out of the game as well. So I would go with the guy who I feel like has the safest floor, and that's Devontae Parker.
I was 100% sure he was going to do the opposite of what Kai and I said. I would have just won some money if I had to bet on it.
Yeah, I think Parker is safer. Yeah, for sure. But
now I'm thinking about it. I have like 4 minutes to make this choice.
Go with the
it's pretty simple.
baby.
Yeah, and that's Devontae Parker. But it is fantastic. It is fucking Rod Smith week. Here we go.
Oh,
I got
yeah.
so much Rod Smith. I got him about 25 the lineups right now.
So that means he's going to score 3 points.
No, it is Rod Smith.
Watch
have
us.
5
Everything lines up
for
for Rod
6
Smith.
yards.
Watch them just not run the
I don't
ball.
care.
Catches.
Not a single rush
He
this
doesn't
game.
need
Just
to
all
carry
passing.
the ball. I don't care about him carrying the ball. He could have 0 carries. I don't care. I think he's going to have a ton of volume, though, in the passing game.
I have Rod in a few leagues. I do like the possibility of him passing a pedestrian Alfred Morris. I don't think Alfred Morris is anything special. And if Rod Smith even shows the slightest bit of potential, they're going to just put him out there. They got 6 games they're going to be without Zeke. They're going to be fighting for a playoff spot. They're going to need someone better than pedestrian, and if Rod Smith shows that possibility, they're going to play him. And I know that I've seen several reports now the team saying that they like Rod Smith, they like his potential, and he could have an opportunity to get more carries. They're going to give Alfred Morris the start, but I think that's mostly just kind of ceremonial at this point, just because he's been the number 2 there, and they got to give Rod an opportunity to step up and play in a real NFL game. He's shown it in preseason quite a bit. He's only had a few carries in real games so far this year, so he's got to show up that he could produce over the course of a full workload.
Right. And then, you factor in the offensive line for Dallas is banged up, missing their star left tackle. I think game script is going to play a ton into this week with I think the Falcons are going to be able to build somewhat of an early lead, and I think that you're going to see Dak have to put the team on his back and really try to carry them, and that does definitely not favor Alfred Morris, who is not a pass catcher whatsoever. Darren McFadden, I know Kyle brought him up earlier, has been inactive all year. There's still been no talk about Darren McFadden even being slightly involved in this game plan. Rod Smith has practiced with the 2s all week, and likely is going to be the pass catching back, very explosive. And so I think with all of those things considered, I think moving forward, Alfred Morris will have some weeks, but this just isn't one of them. And I think this is a Rod Smith week.
I gotta say, I'm really sad that Forte is out this week. I have been hanging on by a thread in the SFB. I lost Aaron Rodgers. I've been starting Brett Hundley. I won last week after a 2-game losing streak, and then there goes Forte out, killing me, man.
Oh, you're telling me I'm 7-2 in the SFB, and I lost Zeke. So,
that's tough. Powell would probably be a good play this week though against Tampa.
He's a fantastic play. Fantastic play.
Yeah, they said that Powell's been like an RB1 like 90% of the time or something when Matt Forte's not in. So it's definitely if you have Powell, start him this week. Absolutely.
It's insane.
It's awesome.
They don't jump on him, use him more, like up his usage. I mean, I know just living here in New York, Jets fans are so tired of seeing Forte. They're constantly clamoring for Powell.
Well, this is the thing, especially this season. Anytime one of them gets a nice workload and we're ready to start them week after week, they get hurt.
Right.
And then it goes back to the other one, and we can start them week after week, and then they get hurt. So I feel like maybe they're beginning to realize that. But, Powell is not a spring chicken. I think the man's 29.
Yep.
Same age as DeMarco Murray. So it's not like it's not like he has young, fresh legs or anything. I think they would be wise to keep splitting them if they want to win games, but it obviously doesn't help us for fantasy.
Yeah, and it's Chris Godwin week too, so that's exciting.
Time's up, boys.
Yep, it is now game time. So hopefully we have given you some decent fantasy advice here, if not fantastic, certified gold here at the end a little bit even. So,
close.
Good luck with your fantasy matchups this week, and make sure you get out there and stay active, especially if you're hunting for that playoff spot. Only a couple weeks left, so enjoy those games today, fellas. Tell them how they can find you on your social media platforms or whatever you want to do. Go ahead and give them a shout out. Anthony, start with you.
At the one and only PZ on Twitter. You'll see me tagging the Fantasy Authority a lot. So if you're following FF Authority, you'll see me.
Kai, what's your Twitter handle?
It's going to be @Kai² with a capital K. That's where you can find me. Also feel free to use #AskTFA. Many of us are following that little hashtag, so we can help you out with questions during the week, Sunday morning, whenever. And then we almost made it. We were so close. I think we were about 3 seconds from going the whole show without a bad Kevin take. And he had to tell people that Chris Godwin was going to smash. We were so close. I just watched the little tick on my clock tick to 11 a.m. right after he said Chris Godwin's a good play.
11 a.m. That must be nice.
Oh yeah.
Well, Kev, where can they find your good/bad takes?
I already know where to look, right? I mean, I have so many followers now. It's just kind of, But we did we just started a DFS Slack chat, and it has been lit all weekend, just nonstop. We were going last night; it's almost 4 a.m. Still conversating about today. So if you want to get in the Slack chat, just DM me, and if it's for DFS, and we will get you in there. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome stuff, guys.
Awesome.
Enjoy the play.
Yeah, my name's my Twitter handle is @ccnp_Kent. You can find me there. Also, make sure to keep Fantasy Authority locked in for the rest of the season. Hopefully, we can help you out. Thank you so much for joining the Game Day Show. We all need to go watch some football. So, enjoy your week and good luck to everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.